Hi, I'm James Shillinglaw, and I'm here with Captain Dan Blanchard, who is CEO of UnCruise Adventures. And we're going to talk to Dan about both his company, and he just launched an association of small boats, small cruise lines here in the U.S., and we're going to talk about that and more. And of course, everyone's talking about COVID-19 and the coronavirus challenge, and we're going to talk to him about that as well. And you'll find out all about that and more on Insider Travel Report. Now, Dan, first of all, how are you and where are you? I think you said you were in your office, which is being remodeled or something, right?
James, interesting times we live in, right? I actually live in Juneau. It's my home, but in early March, I flew down to Seattle to our main office when it was obvious that things were going to turn to the worst, to a challenging period for all of us. And right now I'm sitting outside my office, which is normally right here, because we're taking advantage of this time to paint our offices where our crew's not here. And we've got some of our staff that we didn't want to lay off helping us paint and all this kind of thing.
Well, I guess you got to get them doing something, right? You might as well paint the office.
and you know, James, part of this, that's part of the deeper interview, is we're all reinventing ourselves, right? This is a new day, and UnCruise Adventures is no different. So we are, consolidating our staff into our one primary office, and that means that we're cleaning it up. We're getting rid of years of stuff I should have never been storing in my office, and moving.
Well, it's amazing how coronavirus can have that effect. It makes you clean up everything, right?
The amount of almost in front of every home and business that you see, right?
Right, absolutely.
No, I'm speaking to you from the desk outside my office right now.
Well, there you go. So you can act as secretary and boss, right? There you go.
Yeah, this is Seattle Central at this point.
Excellent. Now, in that vein, what else have you had to do to get through this period with UnCruise Adventures? How are you surviving the crisis and making sure that you will survive in the end?
Yeah, like everyone, it's been a huge challenge. I think we all know our industry has been hit particularly hard with other aspects of hospitality across the board. And that has been a challenge. And, the good thing is a vast majority of our guests are rebooking for next year. It's only a very small percentage that are not rebooking at this point. And that's usually because of health concerns, this kind of thing. And so that's been really good. And so to all our guests and to all our agents out there, thanks for working with us on canceling, moving, not canceling.
No, that's great, and that's what they've been doing. I know that. Now, what is there any projected date of your first cruise in this, or are you still sort of waiting to hear what that might happen?
Well, we're moving along. We're working on what we call a 6 weeks cadence. In other words, every 6 to 8 weeks out, we're looking at every sailing and determining not only is it legally able to happen, which is, in some cases it can't, or communities won't accept vessels at right now or then, but also we're looking at the marketplace. So it's, to say that there's a law that might allow you to operate or not apply to you is one thing, but to know that the market is ready to travel is an entirely different aspect of this. So right now we're sitting in mid-July, and with our start date, I expect that could possibly go to late July. We're working heavily with my hometown in Juneau and the state of Alaska to try to operate sometime in late July. And that's what our hope is. But, it's measuring not only the federal, international, local, and state laws, but like I say, when are guests going to be ready to go? Now, we're starting to get an indication that people are looking positive towards latter July and August.
Now, I haven't kept track, but is Alaska one of those states that's beginning to open up?
It is, but it is a fairly slow open up. Alaska probably took the strongest stance in the nation outside of maybe Hawaii. Alaska has had for many weeks now a 2-week quarantine requirement, where if you go to Alaska or even travel interstate Alaska, there's a $25,000 fine if you don't quarantine for 2 weeks. So Alaska's taken a real aggressive step. I'm actually really proud of that as an Alaskan. And hopefully this will work to our advantage as we come out of this. But I have to say, we're very cautious about it as a state. There's minimal opening up happening. But it's hard for restaurants everywhere. For instance, as an example, a restaurant or bar to even though they might legally be able to open up, to work under the 25 or 50%, it just doesn't work, right?
That's correct. Yeah, absolutely. And I know that I'm sheltering down in Florida right now, and they just opened up last week. And it's lovely for the diners, but not so good for the restaurants at this point.
Yeah, I have family down in Florida experiencing the same thing you are.
Yeah. Now, what sailings and itineraries would you begin with if you end up restarting in July?
Well, what we're looking at is we're working with the Lieutenant Governor of the state of Alaska, with Mayor Beth from Juneau, and we're looking at doing round trips out of Juneau and trying to base just on that. And there's several reasons for that. One is it's the smaller communities that are most concerned if something should happen, that they're going to be affected in a greater way. And also airlift is an issue. So we know that we are going to have airlift into Juneau, being the capital, being the largest town in Southeast Alaska. So we're focusing along with our coalition members on round trip Juneaus and trying to make a door open that would allow for that. So I think that if there is going to be an Alaska season, I believe it's going to be with small ships, and I believe it's going to be round trip Juneaus.
Well, I mean, some of your much larger competitors, or not even the same class, they've already pretty much canceled their Alaska seasons, right?
Yeah, I mean, the vast majority of cruise ships have canceled. I believe that, if we see any cruise ships in Southeast Alaska or in Alaska as a whole, I'm going to be a little surprised. I think and that has probably less to do with the regulation and more to do with the community response.
Right. Now, would you, how many ships do you have in your fleet right now?
We have 8 ships total. Not all are destined for Alaska. In fact, we would probably if we're able to start in late July, we'll probably keep our one boat that is in Juneau right now, ready to start. Keep that working out of Juneau for the rest of the season. That'll probably be our only boat. Now, may have one other.
Yeah, so you're not gonna have all 8 operating, just 1 or 2, right?
No, and typically we would have 6 in Alaska. One of our boats is in Hawaii laid up, waiting for that season to start. And then we have another boat that typically runs down in South America that's also laid up. So out of the 6 we would normally operate, we might be operating a couple in late July, August, and September.
Now let's turn to this new association that you're supporting, that you helped develop in concert with other small boat operators and small cruise lines. What is the purpose of this group, and why did you launch it? And also, what are those other member lines?
Yeah, so to answer your last question first, these are companies like Lindblad Expeditions, Alaska Dream Cruises is a stalwart partner, the Boat Company, which operates smaller vessels in Alaska, American Queen Steamboat, which is all over the rivers, American Cruise Lines, and Blount Small Ship Adventures. Mm-hmm. So those are the primary members. There are other association members as well, from Passenger Vessel Association and a couple other organizations involved on an ad hoc basis. So what is the purpose of this group? Well, the purpose of this group was really very early on in March. It was pretty obvious that stimulus packages were going to be needed to support business throughout the United States. And there was talk of that. So myself and Dave Allen from Alaska Dream Cruises got together, and basically I went out to other companies to bring them together to basically make sure we didn't get caught up in anything we didn't want to be caught up in. So for instance, if you're not from a cruise ship state like yourself or me, a lot of the political pressure has been not to provide funding for foreign flagged and foreign corporations. And we were fearful that if a blanket statement got sent out that there is going to be no stimulus for any kind of cruise, that we as U.S. citizens, U.S. companies, U.S. built boat, U.S. crewed, U.S. working companies would be left out, and
Right.
we wanted to assure that that didn't happen. So the coalition worked very hard with the Alaska delegation, Washington, Rhode Island, many delegations across the United States, which we're still working with, quite frankly, in trying to make sure that if we didn't get a carve out, at least that we weren't left out of general stimulus availability, which has happened.
Did you manage to get some money for these lines? Managed to get some money out of the CARES Act that Congress passed, or not?
Yeah, there's two pieces to the CARES Act. There's the PPP, which most of us know about, and then there's the Treasury piece called the Main Street. Now, the PPP was designed for companies of 500 or less, which my company fits into, and most of the companies in the coalition. There were a couple that were a little larger that are relying not on the PPP, but on the Main Street portion of that loan. So my company received a PPP. It's not like you experienced for your own company. It's a small amount that is helping us get through this really critical period of, April, May, June, maybe early July. And that has helped a lot. Now, the Main Street portion, which is the next piece to come, is still yet to be seen. That's still locked in at Treasury with, they don't have an official term sheet out on that one yet.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm glad that you probably will see, you've seen some money. I guess also the other point of this group is to kind of differentiate small boat cruises from the big guys, right?
Yeah, UnCruise Adventures, and I would say, Lindblad and Alaska Dream, many of the companies in the coalition are really more associated with adventure travel, and that's very true of UnCruise Adventures. Much more associated with adventure travel than with cruise lines. Our whole deal is an appropriate name might be for our company, Sea Lodge, because our boats go, they go and they arrive at a certain cove or fjord in the morning. It's hub and spoke all day with kayaking, hiking, paddleboarding, snorkeling, all these events taking place. And then we come back on board and go to the next place tomorrow. We don't even do any port calls. So it is a different concept entirely, but we still cruise, right? Yeah. We're on board a boat. So we do have a boat we cruise on, but the way we actively participate in cruising is quite a bit different.
No, absolutely. And I have experienced a lot of that small ship cruising in the U.S., and it is a completely different product. Let's turn back to UnCruise Adventures. I assume that this year was probably looking pretty good until, February, March, right?
James, it was awesome. We were sitting... we've been in business at this company for almost 25 years. And prior to that, I was an executive at another and a captain at very early on in Glacier Bay. And this was going to be the biggest year in our history. We were up 18% in a single year, and with no additional assets in place, just with what we had. We were sitting here in late February looking grand. And it wasn't really till I was down in Antarctica where, COVID-19 was taken seriously in late January. And I was actually kind of surprised when I was down there. And when I got back in late February, the gun was just being cocked for this to explode in the United States, as it did in early March. So yeah, it quickly changed. We saw our first cancellations start first week of March. They were very light, and but obviously by the second week in March, it was a raging bull.
Yeah, no, we all experienced that. It was really so quick, and so the whole crisis evolved so quickly. I was actually down in Mexico when it all kind of hit the fan in February. Let's also talk about what is your strategy now to bring guests back, and what marketing are you doing, if any, and when do you expect to roll out any new campaigns?
Well, from a standpoint of what are we doing for marketing right now, Like most businesses, we realize the audience isn't necessarily there in a big way for particularly that advertising side, distribution of hard products, this type of thing. So what we're doing is we're focusing with our wonderful director of communications, Liz, on keeping our social media really moving forward. What we're finding is that's really where the guests are tuning in with us right now. So we've shifted our social media to we have our expedition leaders and staff giving yoga routines to different talks on whales in Alaska, Panama, and all this kind of thing. Because it's kind of almost like virtual touring right now, along with just general good destination marketing. But we'll crank up when we feel like the market is listening again.
Right.
And that I expect that as we get into August and September, that we'll see our marketing start to reignite.
No, that'd be great. Now, what are you doing now to connect with travel advisors to keep them updated on your company, and how are you working with them to get them ready to book? Obviously, if you're going to maybe start some cruises in July, you got to get some bookings. Although I expect that many of your bookings were just simply transferred to those the first cruises.
Yeah, and actually the late July and August, we haven't seen near the deterioration that we did earlier on. Obviously, people are thinking the same thing, that, we might be able to pull off a late July, August, just emotionally themselves, right? Mm-hmm. And certainly we believe that our operations out of Washington State, our Pacific Northwest itineraries, and our river itineraries on the Columbian Snake River, we believe will operate in September and October. I'll be honest, we're holding our breath and working with it all the time. We don't know, but we believe it might have a chance of happening. But as far as communications with agents, we're members with consortia. We still have our business development people communicating with the consortias. We still have our email campaigns to agents to update them on what's going on. And we do have a few webinars that our BDDs are putting on as well. So I think as far as the agent community that's available to listen, and we realize that's also a part of this, we're trying to get out there with fairly consistent, more email and social media campaigns right now.
No, that's great. Now, how has this crisis changed UnCruise Adventures, if indeed it has, other than having some people, become painters instead?
Well, see this hairline?
Yes. That's all. That's just last month, right?
Yeah, I had long hair 2 months ago.
I tell you, boy, it's that worrying. You got to stop. Relax a little.
We're just like everyone. As I started out to say, the recreation of UnCruise and being a more efficient business model, the way every business that's responsible is looking at things right now, and that's happening. We are looking at the way we operate our boats, how we schedule them. We're about ready to, for our first time, go to a managed service provider we have servers right now, which we've had for decades, right? So a lot of things we're modernizing during this lull to make us a better company when we come out of COVID-19. And that's a pretty long list, quite frankly. One of the joys is becoming athletic. And what I mean by that is, I think all of us during really prosperous times kind of sit back a little bit and we work on our business plans and we look at it. But when hard times come, we have to get athletic. We have to be able to move quickly and adjust. And I, in my weekly casts with my staff, our Zoom meetings, I talk about the ability to be adaptable. That you as an individual, us as a company, will get through this if we can be adaptable adapt to this new situation. Mm-hmm. So we talk about that a lot. And that's really the key, we believe, to success in the future, and finding the market, how the market changes, because we don't believe it's going to be the same market that's out there. For instance, we believe that, like so many in the travel industry, that people are going to travel closer to home, that Alaska is going to be a big deal, that the Columbian snake is going to be a big deal, that our trip out of Seattle, right here at our office, which starts on Lake Union and goes through the locks and into the San Juans and such, we're deploying the Wilderness Legacy, one of our ships on that, and it's going to operate most of the summer on 5-night, 6-day trips. So they're a few days shorter, less expensive, because we believe that's what the market's going to be asking for. We're really trying to focus on things that where people can drive, potentially take a socially distanced train, this type of thing, and arrive comfortably at a location that's nearby. And if you look at the history of Alaska, Alaska has always been strong in post-catastrophe, post-9/11, post-2008. Almost every instance of problems in our world have meant that Alaska comes back strong.
No, absolutely. And my next to last question to you was, it sounds, and you just talked about it, that UnCruise Adventures just might have an advantage as we emerge for that, because you are local, you are in the U.S. You don't have to go that far to do these cruises, and that probably gives you a leg up, so to speak.
Yeah, I believe it does, not only from the demographic of people that are of that age and how they might want to travel, but also, I believe it's going to be true that there's going to be less attention on larger ships and more attention on smaller venues. And that's going to be everything from, the baseball stadium compared to a local farm team, all right? Probably the farm team's going to sell out this year.
Yeah, I think so, because if you want to watch baseball, you got to go with the farm team, right?
Yeah. So I think that the more local, and quite frankly, I find that pretty darn pleasing. It reminds me more of my early days in the business, and I don't know, there's something about homespun that's pretty sweet. No,
and go local and go small. I think that's a good way to go in this crisis, I have to tell you. Now, is there anything else, any other messages you want to, we go out to about 100,000 U.S. travel advisors here. Anything else you want to tell them about UnCruise Adventures, about your new association, your group, anything else that they should know?
Well, I think we've hit it pretty good. I think in looking towards the future, UnCruise is going to be there in a different way. We're going to be there in a more local way. We're going to be there in a even more focused than ever on the adventure side. We were already heading back to some of our roots when we started occasionally doing port calls and that kind of thing. And what we found is our guests really want wilderness, they want solitude, they want activity. And so we're amping that up as we go along. I think as far as, the bigger picture of the coalition, I just like we want to support you as an American business. With U.S. employees, I ask that you support us as an American business and with American employees.
Well, Dan, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us about UnCruise Adventures, the new association. And what's the name of that association again?
Well, we call it the U.S. Flag Small Boat Coalition.
Okay, well, a little bit of a mouthful.
Chip out of it.
There you go. But anyway, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. It sounds like hopefully you'll get back in the water by July, and we can see at least a little bit of Alaska cruising, since the big guys are not going to be in there. And you're probably not unhappy about that at times.
James, I've always loved my big brothers and sisters. Without their marketing, I probably wouldn't be here today, right? Because we ride on the coattails of big ship marketing. But I will say, and you're right, come to Alaska this year, because there is no time in the history of the modern world that Alaska is going to be more beautiful and more empty and more real than this year.
Well, I'm there. I got to tell you, I don't know. I have no plans to cruise at this point, but boy, to see Alaska again and in that way, and also as pristine as it sounds like it will be, is going to be quite the experience that may not be duplicated anytime soon.
Yeah, we'll keep our fingers crossed. We can pull her off, right?
Absolutely. Dan, again, thank you very much. I'm James Shillinglaw, and this is Insider Travel Report.